Welcome, everyone, to Survivor's Residuum, where her story is in the making. The technical definition for residuum is a substance or thing that remains or is left behind, in particular, a chemical residue. I like the geology definition because it gets to the heart of this interview series. The geology definition of residuum is a term used to describe the material derived from the in place weathering of bedrock. Depending on the type of parent rock, residuum can vary in texture from a coarse, gravelly material to clay. According to vocabulary.com, it is something left after other parts have been taken away. Synonyms are balance, remainder, residual, residue, and rest. Wherever you are listening right now, let's pause the recording, re listen to the definitions of residuum, and then continue to listen to the interview through that lens. And we are back. It's been a very, very long time since we recorded a Survivor's Residuum episode. I would like to welcome you all to Survivor's Residuum, the podcast that dives into the aftermath of trauma. Today, we're sitting down with a remarkable guest who's sharing her story of survival and resilience. She'll be opening up about her experiences with childhood abuse and spousal abuse and the lasting impacts that they've had on her life. We'll be discussing the residual effects of trauma, the echoes that linger long after the initial wound has healed. Join us for a powerful conversation about healing, growth, and the strength that it takes to keep moving forward. Now, the definition of a survivor is a person who survives, especially a person remaining alive after an event in which others have died or not survived. The remainder of a group of people or things, a person who copes well with difficulties in their life. I would like to welcome my mother, the queen, the one, the only author, nurse, singer, songwriter, dancer, artist, you name it. All of those things and more. Welcome to Survivor's Residuum. Thank you for being on. How are you today?
I'm doing well. I'm so happy to be so loved by you, my daughter. That just makes me feel good. That makes my day. I think that makes my life.
So, I am so honored to have you. As I mentioned in my very first episode, I created this series around you and another friend of mine. I said, these two people I know for sure I would like to have them on this podcast. You have not just one, but you have so many extraordinary stories. This is one that is close to my heart. I know some of the things. You've written a book. I should have read the book. I started to read the book and I couldn't stomach it. I was younger. And so now moving forward, I think, like you've said plenty of times, that that is my legacy. I do want to read it, but we're going to start with your story. What I did is send you a wheel. So we like to do this to kind of break up the monotony of the conversation. There are going to be 5 questions that we'll sporadically ask. They're random questions from a random database, and you'll spin the wheel, and whatever number you get, I'm going to ask that question. Now, if you decide you don't want to answer that question, you can just say sips tea. You sip your tea, you don't want to answer it. That means pass. But if you do want to answer the question, then we will love to have your answer. Got it?
I got it now. I'm looking at this wheel. Okay, here it is. Okay.
Yeah, I'll tell you when to pull it up. You'll be fine. So, we're just going to start off with just kind of what you're doing now, just a brief kind of overview of what you're doing now. And do you think that your trauma in the past influenced what you're doing now, whether that's professionally, socially, in your family? What are you doing now that you believe is possibly successful, but that somehow your trauma shaped?
Well, I'm a nurse practitioner by profession. That means I see people in healthcare setting, primary care setting, and I believe my trauma definitely shaped that selection because I'm with my husband, my current husband, that was shaped by trauma, my selection. I am a writer. I have a radio program. I work in the church. I used to sing, but my voice doesn't work so much. But I do write music. I dance. I love my children. I am very involved in my community. And I think everything that I do is informed by my past, by trauma, by victory, by overcoming. So yeah, I think it's all connected.
Very good. We hope we always learn from our past because a lot of times if we don't learn, we kind of get stuck there. So we're going to start with your childhood. Can you take us back and to your childhood and describe what it was like growing up in that environment, whether it was your immediate household or your extended family, what it was like and how was abuse introduced? Was it always a thing? Was it a one-time thing? What was it like growing up in that environment?
So I grew up primarily or initially with my mom and my brother. My dad left my mom when I was very young. I was young enough to be picked up and held up, and I was a toddler, I believe. I couldn't have been any more than 3 or 4 is what I think. Though I don't have any actual data facts, it's just some things that I see in my mind about that time. So I was raised with my mother and my brother. My mother, she used to cry a lot. She had fun a lot. She laughed a lot. She played a lot. She bowled. She was very jovial, loud, fun, huggy, kissy, and she had sadness. She would cry. My brother and I played with one another and we had fun and we hung out with mom. We did the things that a lot of children do. We went to our grandparents' house, went to friends' house, went to school, did all kind of things. Um, I I was molested by my grandfather, who also molested my mom, which I didn't know before. My mom used to take me to my grandparents a lot, and I spent a lot of time with them. And so that's where my abuse happened, the molestation when I was a young girl.
So, from that, I know you said you went over there a lot. Did you feel safe over there? Because it happens often, but that was somewhere that you had to go. And, you said you didn't know your mother had been molested before. She allowed you to go over there. So, what was your feeling like? Did you have any security at that time growing up? Did you feel like you were secure at home?
I didn't feel a sense of insecurity. It was just the way it was. It was just I felt a lot of shame. I did like going over my grandparents. I like being around my grandmother. I love my grandfather. It was just this molestation that was going on that I became used to. You know, that the secret was go see if my grandmother was asleep. She used to take a Valium and go to sleep, and that was my job. And don't tell anybody, or else we'll get in trouble. That's how that went.
How did you cope with the abuse as a child? Like, did you have any strategies that you felt like you developed to survive? I know that when I was taking psych classes, I was really intrigued with, like, a fugue state or, like, dissociative personality would set it up to where the way that they described it to us in class was like, this is a coping mechanism, and it was actually normal in the time that it was happening because that was the way to kind of survive during the abuse. But then once the abuse is no longer going, then it's called abnormal psychology because it's like you're still, you can still go into these fugue states or these split personalities, but you're no longer needing that to cope anymore. So what were your surviving techniques?
Not telling the secret, just living like I was normal. But I realize now that I probably had states of being in my mind that separated things so that I didn't tell. I wasn't and probably am not always upfront about things. I will have a tendency to hide things.
Yeah, I feel like that is part of the residuum because you create this kind of persona to survive and it becomes ingrained in you. So it goes with you. If not checked, it goes with you into adulthood. Looking back, were there any signs or moments that made you realize that the abuse wasn't your fault? Because you said you felt shame. Were there any times, and this is just specifically speaking about your childhood, that you felt like, that doesn't belong to me?
No, I always blame myself. I mean, I can look I can't really say I blame myself, but then I cannot say I blame myself because I didn't blame anybody. It was just normal, and the first time I tried to tell my mom, well, I did tell her, she confronted my grandfather in a certain way, but she denied that he had done that to her. The second time I told my mom, she admitted that that had happened. So we were passing on this abnormal normalcy, be quiet, don't talk about it, and maybe it just doesn't exist. That's how we lived. So I did feel at fault because there was shame. and I didn't wanna tell. I suppose if I felt that it wasn't my fault, I would have told and pointed the finger. I didn't tell until I think I was 15 years old, and my grandfather asked me for sex, and he was gonna pay me for it, and I felt so used, and I said to him, "Did you ever ask?" Like, my mother was his stepdaughter, and then he had 3 children, and then he had grandchildren by one of his natural sons that we interacted with, and she moved up to California. Up to Northern California. She was from Los Angeles, but she moved up to Oakland, and she was living with them for a while. And I said to him, "Did you ever ask Cheryl to pay her, to have sex with you?" And he said, "No, because she's my real granddaughter." And that hurt me so bad because that was the only grandfather I had known, this very dysfunctional relationship, but I was so hurt that not only have you been using me all these years, but you don't even see me as somebody who belongs to you, and you did this to me because I was not your real granddaughter. And so that's when I told.
Ooh, I told myself that I was going to be professional. So I'm gonna do that, but this is hard. So, going back to when you told your mother, you said you didn't tell until you were 15. I've had other friends tell me their experiences, and the one thing that I see very common is that when I ask, "Did you tell anybody?" they say no. And one of the reasons was, "Well, you don't know my mom, and I didn't want my mom to go to jail, 'cause my mom would've did this and this to so and so," right? There was another person who had the same sentiment, but it was just like, I didn't want my brother to end up locked up if I had said something, right? And so this sense of, like, feeling like they had to protect the person who was supposed to protect them. So now I go back to your mother. When you told her, she confronted him, but did that stop the abuse? And what was that conversation even like? You said it was like a slight type of thing.
Well, what she said is called him on the telephone, and she said, "Daddy," Tracy said that you offered her money for sex, and I just want to let you know that I'm hurt." Like, I was like, that was very much a part of the dysfunction. I just want you to understand, my mother was raised by this man and her mother. He beat her mother in front of her, and then when he would knock her down to the floor, he would hold a gun out that he loaded on her and dare her to call the police. He did this continuous time. Now he called my mother, this was her nickname, ugly. He called her ugly. So for her to confront him like that was probably a really big deal because he was a monster in her life.
Ooh, that's tough.
So he would call her, he called her ugly around me. So that's what he called her. He called her ugh. And it was, like I said, these were normal. It wasn't until I came out of that situation that I realized he was calling my mama ugly.
One of the most beautiful women I've seen, by the way, and I'm not just biased. So it's that going back to, like, you have to dehumanize somebody because as humans, we don't want to innately hurt another human being, but you have to dehumanize them in order to make okay what you're doing to them.
Right. So this was going on. Yeah, and looking back on it, it was just so normal. I was born into this dysfunction, abnormal normalcy. Yeah.
Wow. How did this abuse shape your worldview and relationships as you entered adulthood? And we are going to get to your transition into adulthood and that previous marriage, but just looking at your childhood and teenage years specifically, how did that shape your worldview and relationships?
So, looking back on myself as a child, I always felt like I was alone. I couldn't really get outside of my head. I had relationships with kids and other adults, and I did activities in the community, but there was always this shame around me and in me, and I never felt good enough. I didn't feel okay. But since I was born into this abnormal situation, I didn't feel that there was anybody I could talk to because all of us were abnormal and it was accepted. And I was ashamed, so we didn't even talk about it. Well, I didn't talk about it. And I think that all of us were in our silos of shame. So the worldview that I had, I was just insulated from certain possibilities because of the shame and the fear that I would be found out. So I didn't really venture too far out of my thoughts or my energy that I put into to try to be normal. I was scared of doing that. Even though I had dreams of breaking through, and I think one big dream that I had of breaking through was to be a wife in a normal family and to talk to God at some point. I just wanted to talk to him and be accepted by him.
Who introduced God to you as somebody who you needed to be accepted by? Did you look did you look to God as a father figure because that father figure wasn't there?
It's likely that I did look to God as a father figure. I'm raised in the United States of America. There's Bibles everywhere. We went to church all the time. Both of my grandmothers went to church. My grandmother, my father's side, was a Catholic, and she taught us how to pray the rosary and took us to Catholic church, which, it was a little bit sterile, and I just felt not accepted there. But I think that may have been part of my worldview of not feeling accepted anyway. And then I went to church with my grandmother, my mother's mother, the Baptist church, and it was a little bit it was actually more warm and friendly, more family oriented. I used to sing in church and have a good time, but I still had this sense of shame. I still would not let people know who I am. I still was insulated from the world within myself, even in the community of the church. But that's not my sense of who God. I believe that God was somebody that could come past all the hurt and the pain. I really believe that. And it was one time that I told my mom I wanted to snow in California, for Christmas, because you look on TV, there's snow everywhere at Christmas time, and there was no snow. And my mom, I guess she just raised up her hand. She said, "Well, pray to God," because no, I can't bring snow. And I started praying to God every day at a window in my house. Somehow, I believe that was really a start of a really intimate relationship between me and God. It did snow that year in California, down in the flatlands. It was just sort of peculiar. It did not snow. And I always said, God heard my prayer and let it snow. That means that God really loves me. And so at some point, despite how I didn't feel like in church, I wasn't really a part of it, even though I was there, I did feel like God was hearing me.
Wow, that is definitely a glimpse of beauty in what you were dealing with. I just wanted to go back and say, you said you were in church a lot, but what my specific question is who introduced God to you? You can be around church and was it just you that said, okay, there has to be a God? Or did somebody specifically say, if you talk to him, he can help you? Or was it just that specific experience like grandma said, "Well, you gotta ask him."
I think somehow that I've always been groping outside of myself to somebody who has the answer to everything. And the only answer I have to that is that God placed that in my heart some kind of way. But at different times in my life, there have been specific people who have come to me to represent God to me. They, as far as I could know, they could have been angels. I mean, there have been some that came from nowhere. I just met. They were there for a certain time of my life and they were gone. Like there was this guy named Timothy. I remember him. I can remember his face. He was a tall, handsome, really chocolate skinned young man. And I never met him before. And he just came to me talking about Jesus. At that time when he came, I was probably in college at a time when the professors were really introducing philosophy, Greekisms, and, this secular humanist understanding, which was not Christian. And so a lot of things were coming in my head at one time, trying to make sense out of my life after coming out of a very dysfunctional family. Another time I worked at a liquor store and the owner's son was a Christian and he was telling me about Jesus. And I just took him as another Jesus person, know what it really was about. I've been around people talking about Jesus all my life, but these people were molesters or, strikers or whatever. They just lived their lives. Even though my Aunt Charity, she believed in Jesus, and she's a very, very lovely person, loving person. But this brother that I met at the liquor store, Juan, he was one of 3 people that in my early high school time who really tried to purposely give me a foundation for believing in Jesus and in Christianity. They actually all came from the same church. They all knew one another, but I knew them in separate arenas. And so I would say that those were times when in my high school days when I was evangelized or somebody was talking to me about God as a way of living life.
Very good. I guess I asked that question because I know you, but I just wanted to kind of bring it out and see, like, where the seed was planted and how did that start?
I just wanna say I believe that the seed was being watered at that time because I think, like I said, when you live in a Christian nation and there are Bibles everywhere, people t like my grandmother, if something happened, she would say, "Lord Jesus." You know, there was always this there. Nana, she was always praying, so the seed was planted, but when I was in high school, it went into a different direction. Me actually owning the faith that my parents somehow brought through their dysfunction.
Right, okay. I'm gonna have you spin the wheel, and it should only be 5 numbers. Is it just check and make sure that your wheel just has 5 numbers?
It has 5.
All right, let's go ahead and spin the wheel. Let me know what you got.
I got a 2.
Number 2. Number 2 says, "How did you find the strength to leave your abusive relationship, and what was the turning point?" So, this is kind of a precursor, but we're gonna go ahead and go with it, to your next situation. But how did you find the strength to leave your abusive relationship, and what was the turning point?
So I wanna apply that to my initial abuse, which would be the childhood sexual abuse, because I did leave it. Um, when I was offered money for sex, I left it. I stopped going to my grandparents' house. I just was not available there. I remember, I would go sometimes. I remember going to my grandfather and I was talking to him about the gospel, talking to him about Jesus. And I remember him asking me, "Am I gonna die?" It's like he he knew what he had done to me, and now I'm speaking the power of God's word, and he was asking me, "Am I gonna die?" I said, like, "I don't know when you're gonna die, just like you don't know when you're gonna die, but God is in control." My first abuse, I left a chaotic family for a chaotic for a chaotic future because I didn't know anything. I didn't know where I was going. I thought God was just gonna pick me up somewhere and place me somewhere and make me a new person. That's what I thought. But, I was disabused of that notion pretty soon. So that's how I left that abusive situation.
That's really powerful that you said that. I never saw it like that, and I don't know that many of our listeners have even seen it like that. Some people feel like they don't have a way out, and for quite some time you didn't, but you see it as you leaving that situation. You were able to make a decision at some point to no longer be around a situation that had become so normalized.
Yeah,
So for anybody else, it'd be like, well, this is normal, this is just what happens.
yeah.
And you said, "No, I left that situation."
Yeah, and then I became ostracized. Now, I talked to my grandmother about this. I talked to my mother and I talked to my grandmother. Now, the time I talked to my grandmother, her brother's son, my cousin Stevie, his baby mama had killed their little girl by playing with her. I remember that girl, she was his baby mama. She was very immature and she did have the child when she was a teenager. So what she did was the baby was outside of the car and the mama was playing like she was gonna leave the child. "I'm gonna leave you, I'm gonna leave you." And so she backs the car up. And at the same time, she hit the baby and she's going down the street. And the man said on the street, you hit that baby. Well, the baby died. So now my grandmother had just gone there. And then when she comes home, I tell her about the molest. And now she's just Lord Jesus, help me, Jesus. She's just going through all these conniptions about how my brother's baby grandchild is killed, and now I come home and you're making these accusations. It was like she was blaming me. What did you do to bring this on? She was going through all of this stuff. And I just sort of felt limp, trying to remember back there. I sort of thought she would do something like that. I didn't know if she really would, but I was coming out of an abnormal situation, so I didn't figure there would be a normal response. And so when she did that, my heart was just, I'm done. But not too long after that, I did have a nervous breakdown and end up in a mental hospital. I reached out to a lot of people to help me to normalize what I thought, and they were not there. I reached out to my dad, who had left my mom when we were little kids, and he had nothing to say. He didn't care. And that was the last straw. I had reached out to my mom, I reached out to my grandmother, and then I reached out to my dad, and thereafter I had a nervous breakdown.
So that prompts a question for me. I've said many times to, like I said, friends and family, other people, why didn't you say anything? But it looks like you've said something several times. And yes, after the fact, but it seemed like nobody cared. So then what is the point of saying anything? What would you tell somebody right now who might be listening to this that feels like I have to stay in this because there's nobody to tell, and even if I do, who's gonna care?
Yeah. So what I found is there is life after family. And this is really difficult for a child to get because it's so how do I say this? It's such an oxymoron. It's just so counterintuitive to being born into a family. You trust the family, look to them for your food, your sustenance, and your everything, your love and everything. And when you find out, well, you're getting food, you're getting sustenance, but your spiritual needs, you're just being destroyed from the inside out, it's very difficult to make a transition. You're a child. What do you do? Who do you go to? All your resources come from your family. That's a difficult situation. But you're going to have to reach out to somebody outside of that family system, a safe person in the church, in the school. I mean, now you might meet a safe person that will say, "I gotta take you out of that household," and you might end up in the system. Like, I wouldn't have wanted to end up in the system. Imma be real honest. I wouldn't have wanted to end up in the system. But these are hard things that children have to deal with who are born into dysfunctional families. And there are many of us that are born into dysfunctional families. So in this case, there has to be a benevolent person outside of that system. There's no way that if the system is feeding itself, if that family system is dedicated to keeping its secrets and dedicated to keeping itself well alive, even in its sickness, you have to reach outside that system. Even if that means you need to, if you're a teenager, put yourself in a different situation. You can't do it. Or maybe you can fight the system. Maybe you can just say, look, you better not come in my room. I'll call the police. Or, you grew up in that. But those are difficult things to do. I was wanting my dad who never wanted me all the way up until he died. So these are not easy things to do, but it's a work. You
Yeah.
can't do it by yourself. You need a community. You need a counselor. You need somebody to help you.
This is a quick little side note. Was supposed to be coming out with a t-shirt line this year, but then social media told me that we're not supposed to be making more t-shirts, which make more waste. So I don't know if I'm doing it, but if I were, I would put on a t-shirt, there is life outside of family, because that is very important. I know, several people that have gone through very traumatic situations and is still trying to make the family work. And that could mean so much, but that's very important. There is life out of family. There's
Yeah.
life outside of family.
Yeah. And I'd like to clarify that too, if I will. Th There's not life outside of community. See, we sometimes think my family's the best family, this is the family, I'm a Jones, I'm live a Jones, gonna die a Jones and all that. No, if the Jones are messed up, the Joneses are messed up. Maybe one day you can come and reintroduce yourself to the Joneses, but you might need to become a Smith. You doesn't mean that you need to marry into another family because if you take in your trauma, you're gonna trauma bond somewhere else. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is there is life outside of your family of origin, but I do not believe there's life outside of community because there's a temptation to leave that dysfunctional family and decide, I'm not going to get in any kind of family. I'm not gonna relate to people. I'm gonna be by myself. I'm gonna be a hermit. I'm just gonna just be by myself. But you're not gonna heal by yourself because you're gonna only take what you know into your new selfness. And that's not enough to regenerate a new life. It has to be done in community. The injury was done in community and healing happens in community.
Actually, what you said kind of segues into us talking about your first marriage, your abusive marriage, when you said that if you don't heal, or you could bring, if you're looking for another family, you could actually bring that trauma into another family. So, did you recognize any patterns or red flags in your marriage, your first marriage, that mirrored your childhood experiences?
Wow. So the bonding that I had with my first husband was definitely a trauma bond. When I look back on it, I see that I didn't believe in myself at all. I didn't believe I deserved happiness. I believed that I had no say in my life because my first husband was an abuser. He was a controller. He had pimp mentality. His idea about me was that I was this light-skinned, rich. That's how he thought about me, and he didn't like me. He didn't like who he thought I stood for. He didn't know me, but he did know me in a way because he had pimp mentality. And in order to cause a woman to be a slave to you, you have to realize that she already does not think highly of herself. And see, he got that. He understood that. So I just went along.
That's, you know, I I've said it before that you are my mother, and I was just having this conversation with my cousin recently, and for years, people have this idea about abuse, and everybody has different ideas about it. Until they've gone through it, they don't know, right? But I think that one thing that I guess I didn't realize, or it didn't occur to me until my dad's funeral, was that, like, this man really didn't like you. I thought, like, I guess I had this thing in my mind, like, abusers, they're sick in the head, and but they do have some care. They're sorry, you know, but it never occurred to me that, you know, he could have been just very sinister. Now, when I hear you say that he had this idea about you, that you were from this certain pedigree and you were a uppity Negro, so to speak, and you were light skinned and you had money, right? So possibly his intention already before he even got with you was that of abuse. Do you feel like that?
Yeah, so where I met your dad was in a really peculiar space. What happened is that I went to the mental hospital. When I came out, I was severely depressed. I was so depressed, I didn't want to get out of the bed. And I was taking antipsychotic medication because I was psychotic. I was seeing things, hearing voices, and all kind of things. And they gave me these very strong antipsychotic medications. And so um, I would stay in the bed till 1 o'clock, and then I would get up because I thought I had to just because I was alive. I would take the medicine and eat, and I would go back to bed. When I as soon as the sun went down, I was in the bed, and that was my life every day. And I would, tell my brother, "Please walk with me, because I don't wanna go out like this. I feel like, where's my mind? Where am I? I'm not like my real self. I want to be myself again." So he would take me for walks and everything, and I was trying to work it out. And then my grandmother, my father's mother, and my Uncle Count said, "You don't need to take those medications." My grandmother was an RN. She said, "No, you don't need those medications." And so I stopped taking them. Now, my mom didn't know that, but I did, and I'm glad I did because of medications, antipsychotic medications they have very bad side effects and they're very harsh on the system. And I praise God for healing my mind because I'm a nurse practitioner and I've seen people. under antipsychotic medications. I've seen people when they go off those medications and how they, go into psychosis again. But my psychosis was not schizophrenia or bipolar. My psychosis was induced by very severe depression. And so that's more reversible. So that's what happened. I was just like praying. I was just, Lord, get me out of this, Lord, get me out of this. And pretty soon I came back to a sense of normalcy. But in that sense of normalcy, um, I start reading Eastern philosophy. I start smoking marijuana. I was not trying to be a part of the abnormal, dysfunctional mindset that I came out of. I was somehow trying to change that. And I felt resistance in my mom's house, my mom and my stepdad's house. And so then I said, well, look, I'm getting ready to move to my grandmother's house, right? I'm getting ready to go from the frying pan back into the fire. And I was actually gonna do it, but my stepdad brought my stuff back to their house. He said, "No, you're not going over there. You need to find yourself your own place." So I'm like, "Okay." Like, where do I go? I didn't have a job. I didn't know what to do. And so I just started looking for a place. And I ended up finding this place over by Lake Merritt. And now this area happens to be where a lot of Rastas, where a lot of Eastern philosophy, a lot of um a lot of meditative, like a lot of, subtle
A lot of Oaklanders.
a lot of Oaklanders. It was like, cool. I was there, but it was all kind of stuff there. Now, I moved into this apartment. I put myself in a crazy situation. It was a man. He was renting a room in his apartment. My parents actually let me go there because they wanted me out, but it was not a good situation for me to be in. Okay.
Let's back up just a little bit. Your parents, they knew the situation with your grandfather.
Mhm.
They your stepdad brought your stuff back. I'm assuming in my head that, like, he didn't wanna repeat, he didn't think that your grandfather was safe. But then, no, you have to get out. So
Yeah.
they let you then go and rent an apartment from a man
A
that you
man
don't know.
that we don't know, that they don't know. I mean, I'm a mother now. I was at that time, I was about 19 years old, maybe 20. And I'm like, "How did they do that? They really must have wanted me gone." But they did it. And, that in that neighborhood, I remember when I first came into that neighborhood, you know how people are out on the streets and they see the new people and they see where people are? I remember this guy, his name was M. Willie Ascari. He called himself Escarto, but his name was Ascari because your dad knew who he was. And he said to me, he didn't even know me. He started telling fortunes. He said, You're going to be the type of woman that's going to marry a man um, that you don't love just because you want to be safe." That's what he said. He was
Wow.
actually prophesying, and I
Wow.
didn't understand that. The next person I met was your dad because they saw the fresh meat coming. I don't know if you ever heard that song by Stevie Wonder, "Living Just Enough for the City," and the young boy that comes up from the South and he's in New York City. He's looking around and somebody just drops a deal on him. And before he knows it, he's doing 10 years in prison for something he didn't know he was doing. That was me. Fresh meat came from out of my house in Berkeley, California, graduated from Berkeley High School. My head got turned around because I'm living in a crazy family, and they said, "Get out." Now I'm in Oakland, downtown area where pimps, hustlers, and dealers, and rastas, and all kind of manners of everything, lesbian women, and everything is there. What are they gonna do with me? So your dad dresses up, puts on his cologne, and knocks on my door. He heard there was fresh meat there, and that's how that went.
Wow. Let me tell you that I've lived a completely different life thanks to you. But I have found myself in situations, and I will say that I don't think I've ever been in a situation like that. And, when you talk about, like, you were 19, I can't fathom that for me as a 25-year-old, let alone 19.
Yeah,
I can't fathom that for me. Some people in their 30s, because you don't know which way is up. And so that's just a testament of the type of family that you came from. And when dysfunction doesn't get healed, it just manifests a totally different way.
that's right.
So my next question is you meet this man and I guess how quickly did it turn into abuse? Was it before you got married? Was it after you got married?
Before I got married. So I was in a lot of relationships with a lot of men. And this one man I knew before your dad, he I don't know if I saw him there, he saw me there, and it was like, your dad was a scary person, and he was like, "You need to get away from him," and somehow he was gonna try to help me, but even though this guy, he wasn't abusive, but he was no good, and, so when he came on the scene, your dad was very jealous, and, we weren't married, I don't even know if we were really in a relationship at that point. Oh, yeah, he lived right next door. He moved me right over there in his house next door. That's how we got into a relationship. So he became abusive right then, um, when I was trying to get away from him. And I remember he cooked me soup, saying he was sorry and everything. And then I got back home, back to mama's house, back to safety. But the problem that happened is that I start hearing voices again, and I got scared. So mama said, she said, "You're so gullible. Like, how did you get in a situation like that?" And there was this movie, it was called Oh God in those days, and one of the main characters, her name was Tracy. And so it was on TV, and this character, George Burns, who was playing God, was talking to Tracy. And so in my mind, he's talking to me. And when mama called me gullible, I just went and got back with your dad. And that was the beginning of a relationship that lasted for 3 years.
Wow. What made you stay in the abusive marriage? And what was the turning point that made you realize you needed to leave?
So the story that I've laid out before you, I think everybody can pretty much see that I didn't know where to go. I didn't know how to get there. I didn't know who I was. I didn't know where north, south, east, or west was. But I think one good thing that happened out of that relationship, after he kicked my behind so many times, I found out where north was, where south was, and where east was, and where west was. I knew which way was up. I might not know anything else, but I know one thing. I don't want my behind beat no more. But one thing that Auntie Rashida said, and this really helped me out. She said, Akila, if you do not leave this relationship, your children are gonna hate you. They're gonna grow up and hate you. That was one thing for leaving them in this situation. But the next thing was there was a woman named Helga who was married to this man, and I saw them on 60 Minutes. Helga was a very beautiful woman, but she married an abusive man, and both of them adopted a little girl. And the reason their story was on 60 Minutes is because the man killed the little girl. And when you see Helga at this point, he had beat her so bad that she was not beautiful anymore. She became ugly through abuse. And I remember saying, I don't want to be like Helga. And I remember Auntie Rashida say, your girls are going to grow up and hate you. And so at the opportune time, I tried to leave him twice. I left once. No, I left him once, I told you about. Then I left him one more time. But then the third time, I left him for good.
So I have a question. I was actually just talking to my aunt, and it could be right now her memory is not the greatest, but she remembers telling you that, but she was caught off guard when I discussed the abuse. She knew my dad was an evil person. She knew that he was really mean to you, but apparently she didn't know that he was hitting on you like that. Do you think that you hid it from people in the family? Because from what I know, my cousins knew. So is that just something on her part, or do you think that you were hiding?
Let me tell you, one time I went to I don't know what you're my daughter, so I can't really I don't wanna just tell you certain things because it will hurt you too bad, but may well not have seen it because it's not like something I advertised, and she, of course, would have known that he was mean because he was a mean dude, everybody knew that, he was just crazy, everybody knew that, but it's not like I didn't go around telling people no. But then your grandmother, his mom would have seen things. And his mom was raised with his mom was married to his dad who had abused her. So I'm sure she would have known that. She could have known that. But she knew also that he had been married before and he had abused women before. So that wouldn't have been a surprise to them. So I don't think it would be forgetful on Auntie Rashida's part that she didn't know he was hitting me, but she must have known something because he did said, but I did think it was in response to him abusing me that she said, "You need to get out of that marriage." I think that was in response, but maybe she just saw that he was being mean and I needed to get out because of that.
Yeah, I think so.
Maybe she saw that he was with other women and I need to get out because of that.
So I had, we were spending some time together and I had a conversation and we were at the DMV and she says, "This reminds me of the welfare office." And she started remembering one time that she was in the welfare office and um, this man happened to be just talking and whatever he was saying, he was yelling it out and so this lady goes, "Oh, who's that?" Like, she was intrigued. And she looks around, she says, "Girl, leave that alone. He will leave you in the hospital."
Mm,
And she didn't remember if this was before or after you,
mhm.
but she said I was being real. She said, "That's my brother-in-law. He will leave you in the hospital," because she remembers that he had just left some lady in the hospital.
Mm.
And so it was always known, whether they knew that you were being physically hit or not, um, everybody knew. But I guess my question was, so you didn't find safety in your own home. I don't know that you were really around his family a lot. Did you feel like you were like a prisoner? Were you always around him? Were you scared to leave and go tell anybody else? Or was it more of you dealing with that childhood trauma, that shame? "I didn't tell anybody. I can't tell anybody now. My mom called me gullible. I don't really have anywhere else to go." That kind of held you prisoner? Or
Yeah,
do you
I
feel like you
mean
were physically a prisoner?
I think it might have been both of those. 'Cause I wasn't a prisoner. I mean, I would go and come, but, there were interrogations about where I went and came. I had one prisoner instance, though, and that was when we moved to Louisiana when we had first gotten married, and that's before you were born. I was actually pregnant. That's when we were in a backwoods in Louisiana, and he was holding a gun on me. That was one time when I was a prisoner. I had nowhere to go. I was in the middle of nowhere with no money, but we got back on a plane, and I was back in Yad. I knew where I was. I knew how to get where I was. So I could have left, but then it became more complicated when I had children. The family ties, children loving their dad and being with their family. I tried to leave one time, it was just me and you weren't born yet, and I was almost out, and he came home before I left. I would've been gone, but he said, "Are you leaving? You're trying to leave?" And, it just changed. There had to be a certain thing in my mind to stay, like, I'm a wife, I'm a mother, this new loyalty, this is the new home. When I did leave, your dad used to like to celebrate his birthday. It was very meaningful to him. Usually when he celebrated his birthday, he got drunk because he was an alcoholic. And, I was really trying to keep him home. This codependent me trying to keep him home and keep him safe. "I'm gonna make you dinner," you know, and, of course, he wasn't gonna have any of that. We got up in the morning and we went to the Eastmont Mall. That's when it was still a place and it's still a thing, and he started drinking in the morning. So I'm deciding I'm gonna be like him. I'm gonna be with my husband, Imma drink. I made myself so sick. My goodness. That stopped me from drinking. That I never drank from that time after. It was terrible. Alcohol is a spirit in a bottle. I was just so sick. But he didn't stop. He kept going. I went home. I made some food. And at that night, he decided he wanted to go out. Now, he used to have this cane that he carried, this African stick. And somehow he got in an altercation with this white man and busted his jaw. I don't know if it was with his cane or with the fist. He went to jail, and that was something that was looming over his head. Eventually, it came to be that he would go into work release. Now, when he went into work release, I was really relieved that he was gone. At that time, when he was not there, I was planning how I was getting out of there. But he would come home and put me in check, come home in the morning. He wasn't supposed to, but he would be there. And so one day, my mom asked me to go to a birthday party. her cousin's daughter was having a birthday party. This is a dysfunction in our family. Her cousin had a wife with 2 sons, but his daughter was from his other woman, and they were friends with mom and them, okay? So, we went to the party at McDonald's, and it was across the street from the work release. So, we're at the party. This is my mom's cousin. My cousin, I'm sitting on a seat at McDonald's, and he just has his foot up on the seat. It's like a bench seat, right? Your dad walks in, he's like, "Who's that nigga got his foot up on all up your butt?" And all this kind of stuff. Like, that's my cousin. Right, whatever. And so I go out there, he knocks me down on the ground. Now I have the car, I have 2 children and 2 car seats, and he says, "Give me my car and my children and the keys to my apartment." He's in work release. My mama's up in there, all in family doing whatever. I'm being knocked on the ground. Nobody came out. You hear me? Nobody came out to see what was going on with me. So he takes the keys, he takes the car with my kids in it, and I'm just standing there. He drives around the corner, comes back. I guess he realizes, what am I gonna do with these kids in this car and these keys? And I gotta go to work release. So he drops you off in the car, but he keeps the keys, which means I can't drive the car and I can't get in an apartment because I'm getting ready to pack because I'm finna leave. It's done. So I'm thinking, how am I going to get the keys? So I go over to the work release department and I said, I think my husband has my keys. And so the officer says, well, he's not supposed to be having contact with you. I said, well, now I'm like backing him up. Well, it's not that he had contact with me, it's just that I lost my keys, and I know he has another key. I'm covering. So I go to get the key from him. He brings him and he tells him to bring me the key, and now he starts staring me down, right? So he decides to kiss me, and he bit my lip right there. So I'm like, "Yeah, whatever, negro, I'm out." So wow. Yeah. So I get all my I go. Now at this point, you ready. You don't remember this, of course, because 'cause you're babies. But yeah, let's go. You guys are ready to go. And so I get whatever stuff. I had stashed away some money. Had some coins, but they were in this like little bag, and he must have picked it up and it jingled. So he grabbed my coins, but he didn't find my bills because I had them hid somewhere. And so I got my stuff, put it in the car, and I go to visit my dad to see if we could stay there. Dad said, "No, he got a plate glass window. This dude is just gonna he'll come break his plate glass window. I can't stay there." And then he says, "Well, death is stalking you." Now, mind you, when I left, 2 people had died. One was James Baldwin. One was my stepsister. That was my father's stepdaughter, my stepmother's daughter. She had died. They said that she killed herself. I have a hard time believing that she doused herself with gasoline and set herself on fire, and by the time they found her, the only thing they can identify were her teeth. I think somebody killed her, but anyway, 2 people died, and then dad says to me, "Death is stalking you," and, he put this fear like I wasn't gonna get away. So, I go to mom's house. I said, "Yep, I need to stay," and at that time I don't know if it was mom or somebody said, "You need to file divorce papers right now." And so they just helped me. I started filing divorce papers. I went to legal aid and I put everything in place. And I called when dad said death is stalking you. And he said that I facilitated it by being in that situation. So I felt I needed to do something to show him and to show myself that I'm through with this. So I called work release. And I told them that he knocked me down, took my children, took the car, and he's been coming home and messing with me every day. And they said, "Well, how do we know this is true?" He said, "Women are always trying to get their husbands in trouble or men in trouble." I said, "Okay, that's all right. I told you." And they said, "Well, we believe you. We're going to put him in jail, put the fear of God in him." That's what they said. So they put him in jail. And when he came out of jail and the stuff was gone and we were gone, he busted all the windows in the apartment. And he calls his friend Untu. Ironically, Untu had been my father's friend before. And he said what he was going to do to me, he was going to kill me. And so it was time to go to court. Dad came, my stepdad came, mom came, Auntie Charity came, Big Mama came, Big Daddy came, Bud came. And we was all in court. And Untu came with your dad. And I thought he came to be on his side, but I found out later He came to protect me, who had been my dad's friend. Now, when we went to mediation, it's about the children, you know. My lawyer said, well, the mediator said, we want to have these, they stay half the week with you and half the week with him. And he said, and he was like, this man was mean. I later found out that was your dad's friend. It's like all kind of stuff. And so the mediation agreement was something that I didn't like. And my lawyer said, do you want this? I said, no. So he starts crossing things out and he says, your dad cannot take you out of the 9 counties. And he says, for me, do you want to be bound by that? I said, no. He said, you could take them anywhere. That's how come we could actually come here. But if we had it like the mediator had it, we would not been able to come to Indiana. So we go to court and your dad, he just goes off like he's whatever. It looks like the judge didn't say much of anything, which he didn't, but he wrote everything in my favor. And I later found out that judge was my dad's friend. That's what mom said. So anyway, that's how that ended. I did make a decision. And when I made that decision, the universe, the city, the community, everything changed. It was no longer me being a victim of my grandfather or my parents, my mother not being able to stand up or my dad not caring. It was no longer me seeking anybody to love me, ending up getting in a relationship with an abuser. It was me saying, no, you're not going to touch me. And I have a family. My 2 children, they're my family. And I am going to stand up right now. That's when everything changed for me.
I'm glad you said that. That my next question was what was going through your mind when you finally decided to leave your marriage. You very much articulated that by saying like I don't nobody else needs to do anything. I'm going to do this for me. And somehow, even though I do feel it like that your family was completely negligent most of the time,
Mhm.
somehow after you made that decision
Yeah.
because it showed you backtracked when he said, well, he's not supposed to have keys. You kind of backtracked, right? And still tried to save him. And this time you're like, no, let me say, this is what happened. I have myself to protect, my children to protect. And then it was like everybody got behind you. The judge was the father's friend. Even my dad's friend was on your side,
Yes.
because people knew what his intent was.
Yeah.
But I feel like as your family had been negligent in the past, they would have still been negligent had you not made that decision.
That's right.
Now, whether that's sad or not, that's the case.
I didn't
You
care
made that
anymore.
first step, and then they followed suit.
That's right, because at what I'm even realizing right now while we're talking about it, each person has to say with their mouth and make moves with their body to ward and to be who they want to be. Then the universe is in alignment with you. It's like then God shows up for you. You have to show God what you want. You have to be what you want. No Red Sea is going to part for you until you put your foot on the ground. And that's what I learned. My family, they were in their mess, okay? They didn't have anything for me because they didn't have anything for themselves. They were living their lives, they were living the hand that they were dealt. But that was not my safe space. And that's not how I wanted to raise you. I came out of the marriage smoking cigarettes, but I didn't want you in smoking cigarettes. I remember one day I went into the bathroom and I was getting ready to light up a cigarette, and the voice says, why are you hiding in the bathroom? I said, because I don't want my daughters to see me smoking. I said, well, what do you think they're going to think when they see the smoke coming from under the door? And when you open the door and there's smoke and you smell like smoke, I say, you're right. I'm quitting. And I put the cigarettes in the bottom of the garbage can, and that was it. So now I
Wow.
had a purpose, We're going to take care of me and my girls. And I had a place. My mom said I had a place for a year. I'll stay here for a year till I find something. And I wanted to stay home with you. That's what I wanted to do. But she said, no, you need to get a job so you can take care of these kids. So I went to school and I just didn't matter to me. I'm doing here and I see the Academy of Stenographic Arts. I said, okay, I'll be a court reporter because that was the first commercial that came on the TV.
I wanna I'm getting completely off script here because I'm just like so I wanna go back to and we can take some of this out if you don't want this to be on there. But you discussed a time where you said for his birthday, you're like, "Hey, if he's drinking, I'm drinking,"
Mhm, mhm,
and you got so drunk
mhm,
and you decided, "Oh, I cannot drink again," right?
mhm, mhm.
the smoking, you had that kind of, like, interaction where it's like, "What are you doing?"
Mhm,
And you stopped and you never did it again. There
mhm.
was a time that you told me, like, "If we can't beat him, join him." You decided, "I'm gonna do it because if he's gonna hurt me, let me just let me feel, euphoric for a while."
Well, I mean, I came into the marriage smoking weed. He tried to introduce me to crack, and I'm like, "That stuff smells like vomit." Anything to do with that. No, uh-uh. He did try to get me introduce me to crack. I said, "You must be crazy. I'm not doing that. I ain't doing that. I'll take weed all day, but that was my choice. I was raised smoking weed, so that wasn't but yeah, I got
So
cigarettes and alcohol. I mean, I did get cigarettes and alcohol from my family of origin. All of that was familiar, but that crack cocaine, nah, no, bruh.
Well, I say that to say it's in my bloodline from my dad's side of the family,
And your mama side.
from my mom's side of the family, and somehow you stopped it at, "Okay, someone told me or I got a vision of what the consequences are gonna be. That's gonna affect my child. No, I'm not gonna do it." Or, I got so drunk, I don't wanna ever do this again. I'm not gonna do that again." Like, you made split decisions
Mhm.
that literally changed the trajectory of me and my sister's life
Yep.
because on both sides,
Mhm.
we have drug and alcohol abuse
Mhm.
and very addictive personalities, very addictive traits. I remember a time where I had a roommate I was living with who, I'm a perfume enthusiast. I collect perfumes. Some of them I don't use, but I have tons and tons of perfume. She was like that when it comes to alcohol. Now, I'm not saying she didn't drink, but the ones that she collected, she didn't. So she had like a wall of like alcohol from all sorts of places. And I remember you coming to visit one time and it's like you froze. You even asked me like, "Are you okay? Are you okay with this?" You were, like, really terrified, right? I guess for me to be around, like, all that alcohol. And at the time, I'm not saying that I wasn't drinking at the time, but I had to explain to you, like, "This is her collection.
Mhm.
I don't just, like, be popping booze open," you know? Like, I have a life, I work, I'm a social drinker, but that is not it.
Mhm.
But it didn't hit me until years later. And just looking at both my sister and I, and just looking at other family dynamics and other people like around our age, that we really could have succumbed to that.
Yeah.
To drugs and alcoholism, but it was the decisions made by you. Nope, I'm not going to do that.
Mhm.
And moving forward, that kind of helped our trajectory.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's true. I saw where I came from. I saw that alcohol had a lot to do with a lot of stupidity in our families. And I don't want to just, when I say stupidity, that word is just sort of obnoxious. But what I mean is people not making good choices for their future happiness and the future of their children. You have access to so much greater potential for your children and for yourselves, but you stop with this pleasure that you get from this alcohol. Eventually, my mom, she died of cancer. She had cancer through her body. I think alcohol played a part of that. I mean, cigarettes played a part of that. She let herself go that way. My grandmother, she died of heart disease. I'm sure that her heart disease had a lot to do with the abuse that she allowed herself to suffer. There are things that we had become used to doing and didn't know how to get out or didn't even think we can get out, and even ask the question of how to get out. And even just doing this interview with you right now, I'm realizing how much God worked with me and how my desire to want to get out really, bore fruit. He helped me to get out. And that's all he's looking for, somebody who's willing to be made willing, to be called out, to get out of death and destruction and get out of ways and think about your children and love your children enough to, wake up out of your stupor so that you can be somebody.
Let's go ahead and spin the wheel another time
Okay, let me
and
see.
see what number you got.
It's a 5.
Okay, number 5. What's been the most unexpected part of your healing journey, and how has it changed your perspective on
Wow. That's a big, huge one because as I look back on my life, like I'm 63 now. And so all this started from the time I was a baby. Everything was unexpected. Like, I didn't expect to be moving to Indiana, be a nurse practitioner. I didn't expect to be doing cartooning, have my own radio program, or expect to, when I go in the stores, people know me. I didn't expect to be riding on planes to come visit you and go different places. As a matter of fact, about expectations, I deal with expectation such that, God, what do you want from me? What is your plan for me? And I want to know what that is. I mean, I could say my favorite color is purple. I like purple, but I like all kind of colors. And so I never been a type of person to pine away over, I gotta have this and I need it to go this way. And if it doesn't go this way, I'm not gonna be happy. I have learned how to pivot. So expectations, God has just like done exceedingly abundantly more than I can ask or think. I must say though, I'm dealing with the expectations. My biggest desire has always been for my family to be together. I think my biggest need was for an intact family. And that might be why I put up with certain things in order to be in community. So I never, and I may have gone south on this answer, but I never would have expected one of my daughters to not no contact me. So, and I don't know if that was what the question was asking because everything else has been like pretty cool. I mean, really cool. Even has some I never expected to marry a man from Kenya that would take care of us even with we've had issues, but he's been there for me. God has been taking care of me. But the biggest expectation that I didn't expect to see was that. But then again, while I'm thinking about it, it's going like popcorn. The fact that you're interviewing me right now, I think this goes beyond my wildest dreams. That there is somebody that has picked up my legacy and run with it. That's huge because while I was in a family that was dysfunctional, I came out of that dysfunctional family into creating a dysfunctional family. And I came out of that dysfunctional family with two precious jewels. Precious. Nothing else meant more in life than my babies, my children. First song I ever wrote was about my babies. Lord, I thank you for my many blessings. Oh Lord, I thank you for my little babies. Oh Lord, I thank you for these many blessings. That's the first song I ever wrote. And to look right now, yeah, and to see us celebrating my motherhood and coming together and meeting one another, that's huge. I think that's the biggest surprise God has ever given me. That I have a legacy that will go on into a healthy family. Healthy, not only a family, not only a child that is healthy, but that is serving health. That's beyond my expectations right there.
So I'm glad that this is audio only because I just had a little bit of a breakdown moment, but that is beautiful. I kind of want to tie in what you were saying. Like, this is a really good question where, and unfortunately, I mixed it up. That wasn't one of the random questions. That was part of our healing and growth, but it was perfect. When you said, what has been the most unexpected part of your healing journey? Because you previously said, the phrase that we talked about as far as like, there's life outside of your family.
Mm,
Because you came from a dysfunctional family, what you wanted so bad is to have function
yeah.
or a cohesive family unit with your children. But because of the dysfunction of your childhood family, going into the dysfunction with my dad, it birthed more dysfunction into our family. But coming to the realization that, okay, at 63, we can just be candid enough to say that one of your children has gone no contact with you. Well, I don't even know why there's a term for that, but whatever.
Yes, because a lot of people are doing it. A lot of people are doing something. There's a term for it.
Yeah, well, it's a lot of people getting money because I want that term, okay?
Mm.
But anyways, like I was saying, it's not a secret, and so that is something that you did not expect.
Mm-mm.
And I'm curious, how has that changed your perspective on life? It's been about a year, if not going on almost a year.
It happened in February, so it's over a year now.
Over a year. How has that changed your life? Knowing what you've gone through, knowing what you have tried, knowing what you have tried to change, protect, all the different things, and we all make mistakes, and it is what it is. How has that changed your perspective on life? That unexpected thing that your daughter would remove herself from your life, how has that changed your perspective?
Well, I feel pain about it. At one point, I believed that there will be something that I could do to heal her pain so that we could live happily ever after. But I understand that her journey is her journey, and I don't get to commandeer her journey. I mean, we all have journeys, and we were journeying together at some point. I mean, that's how children come into this world. They're journeying with their parents. And there was attachment issues, and because of where I was when I was pregnant with her, the abuse that I was going through, there were attachment issues with us. I understand that. I understand that mentally. I understand that. Even though there's pain, I get it. Now, though, I first felt pain, and at first I wanted to say, well, she'll come around and I'm going to fix this and it'll be back. But then I realized, no, I'm not going to fix this because this is not it's not mine to fix. This is hers to fix. This is her journey, her relationship with me, her desire. All I want for her is happiness. I will give her things, but I want to be at a distance because I don't want to ingratiate myself upon her, and I don't want to feel the pain of rejection over and over again. I understand that she has issues, like I had issues with my family and my mom had issues with her. I mean, people have issues. We're born in sin and shaped in iniquity, but I can't fix it. Actually, at the point of my healing where I realized I can't fix it. Before, I was trying to fix it, realizing, well, I did this and I did this. And if I had not have done this, then it wouldn't be like this. So it's my responsibility. So I got to fix this. But when she no contacted me the last time, I realized, no, this is her desire. So it's for her to be with me or not to be with me. She knows where I am. I can't change. I don't want to change. I am who I am. And if there's something that I'm doing that's hurting her, if I can, I'll stop it. But if it's something that I'm being that's hurting her, then I am who I am. I can't really fix that. So I see now in a different way. Even though I think about her a lot, I pray for her. I want her to be happy. But now I don't long for her the way I used to long for her to fix it for her or even to be in my embrace. And there's some guilt about that. Like I should be wanting her. Now I'm more like, no, there's work that she needs to do. If she decides that she doesn't want me in her life, that's her decision. I mean, that's her life. She gets to choose. Everybody gets to choose. So that's how I feel about it.
Yeah, I do think, unfortunately, there's always for parents who really care, there's always gonna be some type of mommy guilt, that, I'm not doing enough, I did too much, all the things. But I think one of the main things about this interview, and I talk about this a lot with his and her story. We look back to history a lot. I'm a history buff. I love studying history, but we are all, just 20 seconds ago was my history, right? And so we're all living and we all have these legacies and these things to tell. And you're telling your story. And I think that some of that helps maybe assuage the guilt a little bit where you can take a step back and say, you know what? I did the best with what I had.
Yeah.
And there's no apologies for that. There's no apologies needed for that. I think society would like to tell us that, especially this very, very weak minded society nowadays, just apologize for everything, let people feel how they feel, let people have. No, I don't care if you delete, I don't care if you comment, I don't even have social media anymore, so, it doesn't matter to me.
Hmm.
But I feel like you can take a step back and say, "You know what? I did what I could with the tools I had, and I'm okay with that."
Yeah.
So, as I talk about that, I want to just kind of move into healing and growth. And we talked about kind of your relationship with your family. How has your relationship with yourself changed since leaving the abusive marriage and addressing your childhood trauma?
Wow. It's just going through this journey with you. It's looking at it. It's very interesting because I've been with me all through everywhere. And it's like, oh, I remember me there, I remember me there, I remember me there. And it really takes reflection to see the growth because when I'm with myself, it's just like I'm being me and I'm with me. But now that I look at it, I'm growing. Every day I'm growing. Every day, I don't know if you remember what Sister Linda used to say at her school, every day in every way I'm getting better and better for the positive and for the productive. That's what the children used to say at the school. And that's what I feel. Good, better, best, never let it rest until your good is better and your better is best. Every day I wake up and it's a brand new day and I'm happy. Even if I'm sad about something, it changes. I am enjoying me. I love me. I've been through some stuff I've been through a whole heap with me. I can see the little girl me. I can hug that little girl and say, "Wow, I remember when, girl, when nobody was there loving you, I was there loving you, and I love you now." And even when you were there, even when that shame was dumped upon you, I love you through that. I'm never gonna give up on you, girl. You are an amazing person. Even when you're at your job and it looks like people wanna it's one of your dads saying, "Dump the dump on you." It don't matter because I'm there for you. No matter how things go, I'm there with you. And I feel this bond, this covenant bond with myself. I'm not gonna give up on myself. I'm not gonna commit suicide. I'm not gonna commit spiritual or social or emotional or mental suicide. Every day I'm gonna get up and I'm gonna be my friend. Sometimes I wake up and I'm gonna try a new experiment to see how life goes here. Sometimes I wake up and I look in the mirror like, where did that wrinkle come from? I remember when I first started getting wrinkles and I started looking older. I'm like, I'm not liking this so much. But now I'm embracing this older me. I love me even though I'm older. I'm embracing this new face and this new body and this new perspective. Even to muse and to look at it, I appreciate the opportunities. Yeah, I'm way more connected with me than I used to be. I used to see myself outside of myself. I wasn't connected. I was abused and I was crying and sad, but I didn't see myself as a person who could pick myself up out of that or save myself or to put myself in a different situation. I was just a deer caught in headlights and I was just there. But now I know how to advocate for myself. Even sometimes if I say it with tears, I'm saying it. Even though I had some issues going on with my job, and I was taught, you just be compliant. That's how my family taught me. But no, let's talk about this. I don't know if I have the right words to say, but that ain't right. Let's talk about this. And I saw in a recent issue, I saw how things turned around because I'm advocating for myself. And when I advocated for myself, people start advocating for me as well. So that's my relationship with me.
Never gonna be a journalist because I can't keep a straight face.
You cry?
Boo-hooing over
That's what makes you a good journalist. That's what makes you a good storyteller.
This is one of the most beautiful epiphanies I've ever heard, and I'm trying to get there.
But also, this is your mother's story. So you're not going to go through this with everybody. This is your history.
I'm gonna have you spin the wheel one more time
Okay.
before we go into our last segment.
Okay, there's a one.
Perfect. I was hoping you would get this. I love it. Like when things work out. Number 1 says, "What's one thing you wish people understood about the experience of childhood abuse?"
Wow. I wish people understood that love and grace and peace creates an environment where people get into relationships and cherish children, which would reduce childhood abuse. That everything that we do, everything that we say, everything that we are, how we do relationships, they all are play factors into childhood abuse. We have come in this nation, and by far, this is not the only nation. There are many nations that abuse children, but we have, just looking at the history of this nation was built on a slave economy. So abuse of people was normalized. The type of people, weak people, abuse of weak people was normalized. And then there became an appetite, a sick appetite for preying on people. Even when you look at your televisions, your YouTube, what do you look at? Do you know if you look at people being murdered, then you are creating an environment where murder is likely to take place? If you boycott murder movies, if you boycott situations where child labor is involved, where children are abused, then you reduce the chance for people to be abused. If you boycott pornography, you know children are walking around with pornographic magazines and bringing it to other children and suffering little children to be abused by those ways. So it's not just what is done in secret behind closed doors. It's how we are in society that creeps into people's homes. It creeps into churches, it creeps into safe spaces, it creeps into schools and making them not safe spaces. Everything that everybody does. We can decrease childhood abuse by being better people ourselves, by loving people ourselves.
Wow, that's powerful. That is powerful. It solves the which comes first, the chicken or the egg. It is be a better person. Be a better lover. When I say lover, I'm saying in general, loving human beings. Know who you are with.
Yeah.
Know where you're binding yourself to, because when you do that and then bring a child into that, understand that they're being brought into your environment with your traumas,
Yeah.
with your passed down generational things. Remember that it's not just about pleasure, not just for a second. That when you are deciding to bring a life into this world, everything that has been poured onto you, your parents, your grandparents, if you do not check it, will be poured onto that child. So that's very powerful.
That's right. And you brought up something that's very germane that I didn't say, that you will not know how to get in a right relationship until you're healed. So whoever's been through childhood trauma needs to be healed. You're not going to be able to sweep it under the rug because you're going to naturally gravitate towards your abuser. That will be your relationship. You will naturally gravitate towards your abuser. That is human nature. So in order for you to be healed and to have children that are healed, you gotta reach out for counseling. You can't think, okay, I got away from that. Now I'm gonna get a family of my own. That's what I was thinking. I got away from that. Now I'm gonna make a family of my own. No. If you are not healed, you're gonna take that same mindset into that family. Counseling is necessary. And it might a lifetime of counseling. I'm in a group every week. I always think about healing things. These what you're doing with the podcast. We must never leave the legacy of counseling behind and being in a multitude of counselors and right relationships.
Yeah, that's really good. I think, there has to be some personal healing done, and also I believe there's space for family counseling, and I also believe that if you are deciding to get into a long-term relationship, there's space for counseling there,
Yes.
and there's space for premarital counseling. If you're deciding to get into a marriage, you want to do it before,
Yes.
because like I was told by my premarital counselor, once you're at marriage counseling, not premarital counseling, once you're at marriage counseling, there's already been a few wrong turns made. And now we're trying to repair. And so, not to say that things are going to be perfect, but there should always be a continual drive to kind of check yourself and reframe things and make things better. I want to ask, how do you define resilience and how has your understanding of resilience changed over time?
Hmm. So my understanding of resilience is keep getting up, keep getting up. Now, my understanding of that has changed by saying I was a person that keeps getting up. No matter what I feel about it, I keep getting up. My understanding has changed is that I have to really know what I feel. It's not good enough to keep getting up and stuffing your feelings. You keep getting up and keep going and keep moving and you're still stuffing your feelings. You're not dealing with what you're feeling. You're not dealing with what happened to you. You're not dealing with the scars. You're not dealing with what's going on that's eating you alive that sometimes turns into cancer and diabetes and abuse again from you, abusing yourself and others. So that's how resilience has changed. We have been taught to keep getting up. You don't just lay there, you don't kill yourself, you don't die. I'm not going to kill myself, I'm not going to die. But now I believe I need to look at my feelings. If something becomes strong, if I have a strong passion about something, I need to understand what is that about. I just had a situation with one of my children. I mean, I had a strong feeling about something. It was just, where did that come from? It wasn't from her, it was from me. So I need to always check my feelings. Feelings help us to know where we are, and resilience and checking the feelings, it helps us to realize that we're not just walking along and hiding wounds, but we are healing at the same time we're walking along.
So that leads me into my last and final question. This is something that I always ask everybody. We talk about residuum, right? Something that's left over. And there's always going to be residuum from trauma, right? And sometimes it's positive. Sometimes it can be sifted to be very like sand like, very silky, but also there's other times where it could be gravel type material, and that can make for a very firm foundation. What is the residuum that you have from your trauma, from the abuse, from the neglect, and the residuum that you have? How would you describe it? Does it help? Does it hinder you?
So I was looking around my house in my art. We did an art gallery and I took a lot of my art and I realized much, if not most of my art is art of women and girls and mothers holding children. And so the residuum is this nurturing that I am and this desire to nurture, this thought of being protective over children. That is the residuum. Now, sometimes it looks like if you look around my house, it's all about women and children here. There's no space for men. My husband is very understanding of me and that. I mean, I don't even know if he thinks about it. If he does, he doesn't say it. And if he did think about it, he probably wouldn't say it because he wants this to be a safe space for me and for everybody. And he has a very tender space in his heart for women and people who are abused or children, people who are vulnerable. I think the residuum that is problematic for me sometimes is I fear things that might happen to my children. I tend to be very protective in situations and sometimes have a sense of hopelessness if I feel that they're in danger. And that's something I really want to do counseling on because I realize that's not what my children are going through. That's my residuum, my fear of when my fear of me being not held by my dad or not being supported or my mom being tearful and depressed when he was gone and they're fighting and also my children seeing what I went through, me raising them as a single mom sometimes and then them being grown up and sometimes being in situations I just want to always protect them. So I think those things, yeah. My motherhood is probably the biggest thing I see about me.
That's good. That it shows both sides. It shows kind of how you use it positively, but it also just shows the effects of, I mean, I can't lie. I've dealt with some things, and I have very bad mistrust towards men, any man, and so that's something that. I believe I carried from you, but also from my experiences. So it's there, and it is something to seek counseling about and to just continue to work through. On the lighter note, I want to talk about bucket list living. We always say this at the end, sometimes people's experiences cause you to stay shut down. So I want to know, have your experiences kind of shut you down, or are you kind of all the way on the other spectrum and bucket list living, or are you in the middle? And then from this conversation on, do you think you will open up more to travel more, do more adventures, or do you think you've done enough? What do you feel like?
So I've been pretty much a homebody. Usually I create a world of pleasure and wonder inside of my house. I have different things I like to do, and I usually like to stick close to home. My job is 7 minutes from my house. That was God. I have a tendency. I don't know if it's from my trauma. I think it could be to have a desire for security, safety, and being close to home. I don't usually go for bucket lists. As a matter of fact, I have written music that have gone to seed because I didn't produce on the one hand. But on the other hand, I do bucket lists because I do projects, writing and get out to people, have writing books and then started speaking. And then with you, See, I hang out with my kids. With you, you've shown me different ways. I've been traveling more. So now this is bringing me out of my comfort zone, and my comfort zone is changing. I can go into airports, that used to I just didn't like being around there in the airplane. I'm doing that more. So I'm going more toward bucket list living now. But I think bucket list is like, I want to do this before I die. I want to do this. And I never said anything like that. I wanna get my cards. I wanna get my cards out. I make Asian cards, I wanna get those out. I would like to get those out by next week, and in that sense, I do bucket list living, what I produce. But I still think that is a part of my trauma, always producing things. I would like to get to the point where I'm free to just fly and just go and just hike and just, do things. That is still in my future, and I'm 63. I need to be doing that like ASAP. What do I do to do something out of the box? I'm not trying to take care of anybody. I'm not trying to teach them anything. I'm not trying to bring somebody into the church. I'm not trying to, make sure everybody's okay. That's the way I've been living my life. What I would like to know, how do I free fall? How do I, enjoy something? And that, I need help doing.
Well, I'm your man, 'cause you know how we do over here. We jump off a cliff.
No. Okay, so I'm getting ready. How many stairs are we walking in July? How many stairs I'm gonna be walking up?
768, if I'm not
Yeah, that's crazy.
mistaken.
That's crazy. But I'm gonna do it. Okay. I think I can do that. But my daughter and her birthday, we're gonna walk all these stairs, and she's coached me. I need to be walking stairs every day. And I am very much like, I gotta do this, I gotta do this, I gotta do this every day. So I need to get loose. I
You
need
know
to get
what's so
loose.
funny? Think that, and I don't think it's because of anything you said. Maybe it's just how you present. All of my friends, coworkers, or anybody who have met you, I think they just think that that's the person that you are. Like, we were having the conversation, and I was telling everybody, like, "I'm telling these people that you're gonna have to stay at the hotel. If you can't go, if you're not working out, you're gonna stay at the hotel." And everybody's like, "Oh, your mom could do that with her eyes closed." Like, people believe that you are, like, on it like that. Like, I mean, every time I mention you, it's, "Oh, she's so beautiful. Oh, she's so talented. Oh, your mom is just so lovely. Oh, this," and I'm just like, not to say that I don't see that. I do, but it's just like, wow, I think you don't realize what you exude when you come around, just your presence. I mean, there are definitely people that I know that have been through the traumas that you've been through and more. And it's just like some people have not even had a conversation with you, but just a quick hug from you or something like that. And you're like, oh, your mom is so great. She gives the best hugs, this and that. And it's just like, think, I think that you don't even know that you actually with your busyness and all it is, you're on that bucket list.
Wow.
You're on that end of the spectrum because the things that you probably never even dreamed of doing, you
Mm.
do every day, and you make it look so effortless, right? So, we gonna get up them steps, and we also might jump off of a mountain
Ah!
sometime in the near future.
I remember when I got that video of you doing it, you said, "This is crazy."
Te muy like, I couldn't believe I did it, but I did it, and every time I watch that video, like, I'm grinning from ear to ear. It's like, wow. I used to have dreams of and I know a lot of people have dreams of flying, but I always had dreams of flying, but my dream wouldn't just be taking flight. I would always jump off a cliff. I would always jump off a cliff or a mountain, and then I would flap my arms,
Mm.
and my arms would take me up. It would take me back up, and I would always fly, and I was just like, "Wow."
Wow.
Full circle moment. But I just wanna thank you so much. This has been rich. It's been hard, a little hard, but, stories need to be told, and I just wanna applaud you for not stopping. Sometimes the success is just like you were talking about resilience, just getting back up. Yes, you have to do the work and all of that, but sometimes it's just not stopping.
Mm. Mhm.
And I just want to applaud you for not stopping, and just for continuing on. And I'm sure somewhere in the near future, there's a part 2, 3, 4 to this story. So I just want to thank you so much for taking the time to be honest and share your story with us. And we will see you all next time for Survivor's Residual. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to Survivor's Residuum. Oh, remember, don't forget to remember to use your noggin. Bye.